Damn, my corona look is not great. So today's video is going to be a little bit different to my usual content. I'm going to be talking about the origins of my name. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that my name on there is Aaron Deftly, and I kind of carried that over to YouTube because I really like that name. But before it was that, it was Aaron the Entomologist. So if you couldn't tell already, my affinity towards nature was not born in horticulture, it was born in entomology and herpetology at a very young age. I think I was 6 when I got my first tarantula, and maybe 5 or 4 when I got my first stick insects. And then I think I was also 6 when I got my first snake. And since then, it's been a roller coaster ride of love and appreciation for them. So I'm going to show you why I changed my name to Aaron Deftly and not something more plant friendly like maybe Aaron Lively. And I hope you guys enjoy it. I really do. So I think it's important to say that over the years, my love for entomology has only ever grown. It inspired me to love science, become obsessed with nature, and honestly, I can't dictate to you how much it actually means to me to be able to have these strange and wonderful examples of the natural world. They truly are a curiosity. And that's kind of the origins of Aaron Deftly. I adore these animals. I adore them both alive and preserved. I find them just insanely interesting to be able to observe and obsess over time and time again. I find myself absolutely enthralled by the kinds of colours and textures and structures of these animals. Things that you just do not think exist in the natural world but do. And that's why I implore you to look into entomology, look into taxonomy. It's my way of keeping my connection with the natural world outside of plants and horticulture. This is my way of keeping just frozen pieces of entomology for me to always relate back to what makes me happy and to what gives me that spark of interest and intrigue, away from the world, away from everything else. When you're enthralled in something like this, it's incredibly peaceful. And I understand that it has a certain morbidity to it, and there are certain things that you should know. If you want to get into this hobby, if you want to get into preserving and enjoying these animals in this form, you need to either make sure that you're raising them yourself and, providing yourself your own specimens, or if you're buying them, you need to make sure you're buying them from a reputable seller, because so very many online are just harvested from the wild, and though it's very hard to make a dent in populations of insects, when it comes to the rarer, prettier, more wanted species, it can cause serious long-term problems. So I implore you to use only farm-produced specimens, ethically sourced. If at all possible, vet the sellers you get them from, talk to them, and they'll be happy to tell you what's what. And if they aren't, then you know they're not a good seller. But enjoy the Beetle Spreading next. So, today's a little bit different. I'm going to show you how to spread and pin a beetle for entomology cases, for personal collections. It should be noted that not only did I raise these beetles myself, but they also only passed naturally. And the good thing about beetles when they pass is you have a good few days before they'll start to harden, particularly if you are keeping them correctly inside a humid container. Harder things to pin would definitely come under the guise of these. So these are tarantulas, they're Ferrophosidae. This is an avicularia or Avicularia purpureum, actually, I believe. And this here is a Pteronoculus marinus. These were both ex-pets. Passing was sad, but they are stunning specimens, and they sort of live on forever this way. The pink toe on this side here was much easier to pin and spread because they dried quicker. The Pteronoculus is quite a lot larger, so it's still actually a little bit soft, even though I pinned it over 2 weeks ago. But that's slightly more advanced. Today we're going to keep it nice and simple with just a average and easy to pin fruit beetle. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you obviously are going to need a pinning board. This is a couple different pinning boards altogether. I've decided to pin it on my slightly softer polystyrene. The harder polystyrene I find is better for larger specimens, but with smaller appendages like this, it's much safer to pin them on something like this. That way there's a little bit more give to the pins, and you're not going to snap anything brittle as long as you're gentle. And that is really the key. So the first port of call is rather simple, and that is selecting a primary pin. Now, a primary pin is the one that's going to stay in there forever. It's the one that's going to hold the entire specimen up when you're moving it into case to case or looking at it for observation or what have you. And it's important to select the right one. So with beetles, you want to pin just off the center, past the carapace, over to the thorax. This is the thorax medium here. This is the dead center. You want to pin just off center, so about here. And this is where you got to be kind of gross. You've got to line it up and then push as fast as you can, and then pull up. And as you can see, it's pinned much more sufficiently now. It keeps it stable. It's slightly off center. It's relatively straight. This isn't super important, but you want to make sure that it's kind of perpendicular with the pin itself. But you're going to take some fine tipped tweezers and very, very carefully pry out the legs. Now, after doing so, you should have something along the lines of this. You'll see that the legs are pulled out. The back legs are a little bit more resistant. They have a much thicker chitin and much thicker ligaments. So they're easier to pin because they're more sturdy, but they are more difficult to place, which is the problem. And don't be afraid to alter anything if you feel like you're obstructing your view or your vision. The next step is pretty simple, which is just to pin the legs out and well so that they are in a spread form, and I will show you it once it is done. But like I was saying, you just take your tweezers, you slowly pull the legs out and down, and then you take other pins and you press them into the leg and into the polystyrene, and then you repeat to create a sort of cross that will then hold the limb in place. Now, you could do this on a gridded piece of paper over some polystyrene just to give you some legend to work with for correct parallel positioning. But don't freak too much. This is just a Pacnoda marginata. These beetles are very common in the pet trade. The grubs are frequently sold as feeder food, but I find them to be utterly stunning beetles, and I've got quite a few pinned and preserved from over the years, and I find them to be very pretty. So they're a great place to start, because they're fun to raise and keep, and they all breed really readily, and this way you get to keep some kind of forever and kind of explore the ins and outs of entomological taxonomy, which is super duper fun. So we're just going to do the other leg. One thing you do have to watch out for is if you are not a fan of the noise of polystyrene, because you will hear a lot of it. If it really bothers you, you can use mediums like balsa wood that are incredibly soft and work just as well for pinning and preserving specimens. But I will tell you that you will have some issues using smaller diameter pins, as the wood is quite resistant to them. But it's up to you. There are other mediums. Some people use hard sponge or the floral blocks. I like polystyrene because it means that when I get it in the post, I don't throw it away. It doesn't end up in a landfill. I use it for many years actually, and it's incredibly useful for this specific thing. So I've got no qualms about it. Now you'll notice that I've actually ended up pinning it kind of at an angle this way. That's fine because I can see the legs are still even, and I can still alter when and how I need to, which I really like about this kind of hobby. You can really just make it your own kind of thing. Like, there are no rules. You can pin them however you want. I'm going by what I was taught as an entomologist, to pin specimens a certain way for ease of observation and for ease of storage. But you can do it any way you like. That's completely up to you. Just need to make sure I'm not pulling on the thorax too much. Don't be afraid to use your hands and your fingers, as long as you're comfortable with it. It can be a really good tool as well. I mean, tweezers are great and all, but nothing quite beats being able to feel your way around. Looking back, I do wish that I started this on a clean piece of polystyrene, so you didn't see all my pins and messy pieces of paper. But, it's what it is. So again, just going to take the tweezers, and we're just going to lightly massage out the posterior legs, like so. I'm just going to pin that in place, like that. And before you guys ask, which I know you will, yes, I have stabbed myself in the finger many times. No, it's not a big deal, and no, it doesn't really hurt. You just kind of, particularly with the tiny pins, you'll find that it usually causes a little callus like guitar players, because it slowly it pushes little pieces of skin off at the edges of your fingers if you're using your fingers. So be mindful of that. Please don't hurt yourselves whilst doing this. Particularly if you're doing this with your children and you're, trying to teach them about entomology and about the natural world. Okay, so we are coming to the end of the legs now, so I'm just going to finish them off and come back to you. So the final step for closed wing beetle spreading is to, again, very, very gently, you might even want to switch from a sharp-tipped tweezer to a slightly more blunt-tipped tweezer, because at this stage we're going to pry the antenna off slightly, and the reason you want to do that is because you can then position the head a little easier. I've just realised my tweezers are bent outwards, which is not useful. Okay. So, using a blunt tipped tweezer, I usually support my pinky, go straight in and just lightly feel your way around, see where everything is. If the antenna is damaged, then, you don't have to do this, but I prefer to at least push them out slightly, as they can be, some species have incredibly long ones, like Longhorn Beetles. So these ones are actually really, really stubby, and there isn't much point in pushing them out. I don't know if you can see just how stubby they actually are. I'll try and show you, but I'll actually use the fine point tweezers. They're just here, and they are absolutely tiny little antenna. So this species, I don't necessarily need to pull these out all too much, as they are relatively small, and I've also pinning this at a pretty elevated angle, so to get these to stay would be another cross of pins that will probably be significantly smaller than what I'm willing to use on this. But I will show you the finished product when it's dried and in my beetle box. So thank you for watching. So, the beetle is still pinning, but I figured for the sake of ending the video quickly, here are some of the other Pachnoda marginatas that I have pinned over the years, as well as the rest of my current beetle collection. I haven't got too many, I've only got a few. This one was a recent pet of mine. It was one of the giant African flower beetles. It was a lone male, unfortunately, as it was part of a failed colony, but I kept him for his couple months of life, gave him lots of food and a really cute enclosure, and they don't live very long when they're adults, fortunately. This is actually the first beetle I ever got. This was pre-pinned, and I simply bought it for my collection, but I fell totally in love with the insane colours. Now, I never remember the species. Species is Stenatomus pulchra ornata, discovered by Olivier in 1795. Collected from Central African Republic, and that's where I got it from. I think it was like the Mothman or something. It was a peculiar name, but still, these are some other African fruit beetles that I've raised, and you can just catch the iridescence on their wing cases, which is utterly incredible. And some others that I've collected or kept. This lovely little beetle here I collected in Cyprus. Kept it for a few days, and it passed away. And I figured, well, great opportunity to pin it. And so I have. But yes, this is the little case I have them in. It's got a little sliding plastic cover. You don't want to keep them in an open environment because they will rot in humidity. You want to keep them very dry and very temperate. But yeah, that's this video for now. Let me know if you want to see anything else. I do also spread Lepidoptera, like butterflies and moths. But yeah, thanks for watching.